What's going on, everybody? Doc from Average Gamer Guys, back yet again. More Halo Wars 2 action, and the updates for this game, the changes, they just keep a-coming. So yesterday, we had actually balance changes, official balance changes, dedicated balance changes coming up. Actually get released with a server-side patch for the game, and there's a ton of stuff here. I'm going to try not to ramble like I did too much. We're going to jump right into these. We'll have some gameplay in the background, and we'll roll through all of them. As always, I will link the forum post down below so you guys can go check it out. Additionally, in the notes section, you can find our Twitter link, the Xbox Average Gamer Guys Club reminder, and all that good stuff. So if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, follow us on all that stuff. And if this video was helpful, hit that like button and let us know down in the comments. I'd love to hear it. What do you guys think of the balance changes? So there's really a couple different, two really kind of separate different sections that they broke these balance changes into. I'm not going to go through every single one, but we essentially have hero balancing changes. All the heroes have been adjusted essentially to make them more powerful, also make them more available quickly, to be good potent forces in both the early, mid, and late game. They are more vulnerable initially, but they're also more powerful when fully upgraded. So they talk about protecting them, allowing them to gain veterancy is going to make them even that much more powerful. They've also been balanced between the leaders to make them more competitive with each other. I always like to hear that. Lower armor benefits and increased damage from tier 3 vehicles and artillery is going to make it that so garrisoning leaders is going to make it harder or easier for them to get out of defenses. Now, this is something that we saw just up front, especially with Colony and the Hunter Captain. People were having a hard time. So it's nice to see that they're not getting quite the boosts and the bonus that they were back a little bit ago. There's a ton. So they talk through Spartan Alice, Jerome, and Douglas. And just to give you guys an idea, essentially a lot of this stuff, although the variables or the amount changes per leader, generally is pretty close to the same. So most of them are having starting HP reduced. Their basic DPS is going to be increased. Their costs, honestly, some of them decrease, some of them increase. Their build time usually decreases, most of the time is reduced. So in the instance of Alice, Jerome, and Douglas, they're reducing from 40 to 30 seconds. Their upgrade costs are reduced a little bit. Now again, this kind of differs between the two. But then their different tier upgrades have been reworked. So they get an upgrade 1 increases, their bonus damage is increased by 4%. Their HP and SP increases by 13%. On their upgrade 2, their damage bonus is going to be reduced by minus 11%. Their upgrade HP and SP bonus is going to be increased by 29%. And then you see very similar tier 3 upgrades for them, reducing some of the bonus damage, but also increasing some of the HP and SP. So it seems like, using the Spartans as just an example, it seems like, again, their DPS is increased initially, and then each subsequent level after that, their bonuses for those, how much they were actually getting, is being decreased. Now, I think overall, they're probably, like they said, still more powerful, but I think it's at each subsequent level, they're not quite getting the bump that we're used to with each of the subsequent upgrades. So it's important to note, these numbers are not how much they're actually being increased, it's what the percent change was from the previous version to the current version. So hopefully that makes sense for everybody, and hopefully I didn't just butcher it or confuse you. Essentially, their tiers, the amounts, they're changing, either being decreased or increased based on the previous version. So you have Forge's Warthog getting some changes here. Again, all these stay very similar. Consano's Cyclops is getting some very similar upgrades as well. Sergeant Johnson also getting some upgrades and some changes. But again, a lot of these pretty much across the board are very similar. They have very similar effects, a lot of the same, although numbers and some of the percentages do change to align them a little bit better. So I'm happy about that. I think this is a good change here. Commander Jerome is actually getting quite a bit of balance changes, which is good, I guess, but interesting for the fact that They didn't just release him like this, so I'm not really too sure on this one. His starting HP is going to be reduced. His DPS is going to be increased for essentially both of his the Hydra and against vehicles, which is interesting to me. His Mantis laser DPS is going to be increased, and so is the missile launcher. He has a decreased cost and reduced build time, as well as upgrade costs are also reduced. But he has a ton of additional upgrade effects that were reworked, but mostly just because they're balancing the leader, so Commander Jerome, as well as his Command Mantis. So that's the change that you guys see there. Brute Warlord getting some additional changes, as well as Atriox Chosen, again very similar to a lot of them, although percentages being different. Same thing with the Honor Guard and the Hunter Captain. I think it's interesting to note with a Hunter Captain that his lifesteal has been reduced by 24%, which is one of those things that really I think made him so potent and made him so survivable, is the fact that he essentially was siphoning all that health. So that's going to be something to look out for in the future. I don't know that he's going to be able to sustain damage and kind of be as tanky as he was before, which is at least that's how I use them, and a lot of people probably use them, especially if they were throwing him in a garrison or anything like that. Arbiter's also getting some changes. Lastly, with the heroes, two things I'll note. Their hero veterancy requirements have increased, so it seems like it's taking them more kills and more damage to be able to increase their veteran level. The first veteran level is going to takes 108% increase, second 100%, and then level 3 veteran is going to take 67%. So interesting to note. They've also changed across the board how, again, damage versus heroes in garrison is going to be increased for tier 3 vehicles and artillery units. So again, that's going to be your top tier units, the capability for them to deal damage while the hero is actually in a garrison, which I would believe would consider not only the garrisons on the map, so talking specific to deathmatch, but also anything that can garrison a vehicle. So I would assume the new Mastodon, as well as Sergeant Johnson's bunker, things like that should all take effect. So then we go on to more balance changes, talking through buildings and specific units. Essentially, I won't read through all of this, but they've essentially tried to continue to line up choppers and jackrabbits. The Jackrabbit has essentially probably been on the lower end. It now has weapons without, at the very beginning, once spawned, without requiring an upgrade, which is going to make them a little bit more competitive against the banished units, so I like to see that. They've also kind of adjusted the ram damage on that in order to kind of balance the effect that they're giving. There's a bunch of chopper changes, health and damage being slightly lowered, build time increased a little bit, Jackrabbit health and damage increased slightly, again, to set them up. Ram damage, all different percentages of what it affects, but changes there, most decreases. Certain specific key tier 2 vehicles, which includes your Mantis, your Warthog, and your Marauder, they've all been adjusted. That's going to improve their impact as well as their cost effectiveness in the mid and late game. While tier 3 vehicles, such as your Colossus, your Grizzly, and your Kodiak, they're now more powerful, which improves their competitiveness against their banished counterparts. Reavers have an increased rate of fire, which is going to make them more potent, and I think probably the best balance change that we're going to see out of this, or at least in my opinion, is the fact that Shrouds are now less effective at intercepting projectiles, and it requires more of them to achieve the same levels of protection. Now, I was seeing a lot, especially recently, and I use it myself to a certain extent, how effective Banshees have been, especially partnered up with some Shrouds, a good mix in there, and you didn't need a ton of Shrouds, especially if everything was leveled up and you had your air leveled up. They could really destroy some bases, so much to the fact that it was hard to counter them even with straight anti-air units. Now, there's a strategy out there that could do it, but it was pretty difficult. So them kind of rebalancing the Shrouds and also making Reavers slightly more effective against anti-air, I think is really going to help kind of balance that whole thing out. Now, We do have the Phantom to consider. That's something I've been playing around with the last 2 days or so, just to check its effectiveness, and they're pretty good too. So it'll be interesting to see. I think I'm hoping we won't have to wait as long as we did for other balance changes like we did for this one, because it's been a long time since we've got a very dedicated balance change patch. But all good things to see. The other thing I'll note, Mantis health and damage is being increased 20% for HP, and their DPS by 10%. The Mantis is one of those things where people want to use it. It's a super neat unit, but the fact of how slow it is and the fact that it didn't deal a ton of damage and it really was kind of squishy really is making it so that people aren't picking it up and trying to get it into the fight. Hopefully these changes, as well as changes with the Colossus to increased HP, DPS, and also a little bit of reduced build time, will make them more viable in the long run. Just scrolling through here again, you'll see it up on screen. Nothing else really stands out to me. It's interesting, I guess, that the Marauder cost and population requirement were lowered, but it also reduced the missile speed by about 20%. So that's kind of interesting. Grizzly's getting some bump. Kodiak's getting some bump. I like that, again, the Shroud has a slower recharge rate on its anti-projectile defense. Again, very good there. And then an increased rate of fire for the Reavers. And then reinstated turrets gaining damage improvements from Fortify upgrades. That's actually pretty good too. I think you need to make those turrets, they need to have some survivability too, because especially in kind of the earlier game, while you're probably not doing Fortify upgrades, the fact of the matter is that you got to be able to defend your base a little bit, and turrets should really be one of your first lines of defenses that stick around for a while. So that's really covering it all. I didn't go too much into detail. Again, I will link the post down below, but I wanted to get these out to you guys. I wanted to chat through them, and I do want to hear what you guys think. I personally think a lot of these balance changes are really good. I think they were smart. I think a lot of stuff that the community has been asking for to get fixed, most of it, to be honest, was addressed. I didn't quite expect to see so much of a hero balance, but I'm always a fan, although not of certain reductions. I'm always a fan of trying to get heroes more in line with each other, and leaders more in line with each other. Now, that's not always going to be capable based on the different units and leader powers that they have, but one decent thing that they can do, and they did here, was to balance the actual leaders for each, or the hero units for each of the leaders. So I do like that. But let me know down in the comments below. We got a lot more Halo Wars 2 content coming out, and this comes as, honestly, this patch and these balance updates come at a perfect time right after the release. So it will let them, for the next couple weeks, take a look at the game state, kind of run some statistics from the ground, moving forward with with an even playing field to see maybe where they missed the mark, or maybe what else needs to be tuned. And I'm hoping, if it was me and I was running the show, I would look to probably do balance changes maybe every 2 to 3 weeks. 2 weeks, just because you can expect that there's going to be some changes when the new leaders release, but obviously they're not sticking to a date on those, so it's all kind of dependent on that. But 2 to 3 weeks, I think, would keep the health of the game. Playing some matches pretty late last night, I was finding them, but again, I'm worried still that the population might not just quite be there yet, or it's not being sustained. Obviously, this DLC release should help things, especially season pass holders that might have jumped out of the game, but we will see. I've been Doc from Average Gamer, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Again, I hope this was helpful, and I hope you pick something up from it. Please check that forum post out. You can read all the specific details there to kind of modify your strategies a little bit. And again, we'll have a ton more Halo Wars 2 content coming out over the course of the next week or so. 4th of July weekend should be a good weekend for us with some time off of work. So expect quite a bit of content. And in order to catch all that stuff, if you're new, make sure to subscribe. And if you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter. Every time we upload a video, it'll send a tweet out, let you know that we got something new up with a link that can take you right there. So if you're mobile, or you're out and about and you want to check out our videos, it's a great way to do it. You can watch it right from your phone. So thanks again, appreciate all the support, and we'll catch you in the next one.